Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. Buckle up, as it's a long one, and don't forget to listen to the end of the story to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, guys, and please like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment.
Growing up, I thought my family was like any other. My parents seemed happy together, and I had a strong bond with my father, who I'll call Tom. He was my rock, my safe place. Tom taught me how to ride a bike, stayed up late helping me with school projects, and made me feel like I could do anything. I idolized him, and I genuinely believed I was lucky to have such a loving and supportive father. Looking back, I can see there were cracks in my parents' marriage. My mom and dad argued often, though they always tried to shield me from it. My mom would sometimes overcompensate by being overly apologetic or catering to Tom in ways that, as a child, I didn't fully understand. But I had no idea what those arguments were really about or how they would eventually change my life forever. When I was 16, everything came crashing down. One night, I came home from a friend's house to find my parents in the middle of a screaming match. My mom was sobbing, my dad looked furious, and the tension in the room was suffocating. When I tried to retreat to my room, Tom stopped me and said, "No, you need to hear this." What followed was a conversation that shattered my entire world. My dad angrily announced that he had just found out I wasn't biologically his. He explained that my mom had an affair around the time I was conceived, and that a recent argument had led her to finally admit the truth. He had secretly taken a DNA test without telling either of us, and it confirmed his worst fear. I wasn't his biological child. I was stunned. My mom tried to explain, saying that she had made a mistake, but that Tom had always been my father in every way that mattered. She begged him not to let this revelation change things, but it was clear from the look on his face that everything had already changed. The days and weeks that followed were some of the most painful of my life. Tom, the man I had loved and trusted my entire childhood, became distant and cold. He stopped speaking to me unless absolutely necessary and began avoiding me altogether. Every interaction we had was laced with bitterness, as if I were somehow responsible for my mother's actions. Then, one day, he came home with a packed suitcase and announced he was leaving. He told my mom their marriage was over and that he couldn't stay in a house filled with lies. Before walking out the door, he turned to me and said, "You're not my daughter. You never were." Those words broke me. I felt like my entire identity had been ripped away. For years, I had believed I was Tom's daughter, but now I felt like an imposter in my own life. I tried to reach out to him, to remind him of all the memories we had shared, but he refused to listen. He made it clear that, in his eyes, I was nothing to him anymore. After Tom left, my mom and I were left to pick up the pieces. She was racked with guilt over her affair and the fallout it caused, and I was struggling to process the rejection and abandonment. It felt like I had lost both parents in different ways. My mom was consumed by her guilt, and Tom had walked out of my life completely. During this time, my mom met Greg, a kind and patient man who would eventually become my stepfather. At first, I wanted nothing to do with him. I was still grieving the loss of my relationship with Tom and didn't want anyone trying to replace him. But Greg never pushed. He gave me space, treated me with respect, and showed up for me in ways I desperately needed. Over time, Greg became the father figure I didn't know I needed. He was there for my high school graduation, cheered me on through college, and walked me down the aisle at my wedding. By the time I reached adulthood, I was calling him Dad without hesitation. As for Tom, he remarried a few years after the divorce and started a new family. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that he had a son and daughter with his new wife and seemed to have moved on completely. He never reached out to me, not for birthdays, graduations, or any other milestones. It was like I had ceased to exist in his world. For years, I carried the pain of his rejection, but eventually, I came to terms with it. I realized that I didn't need his validation or approval to live a happy and fulfilling life. I built a successful career, married a wonderful man, and became a mother to a beautiful little girl, Mia. Being a parent has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. Mia is the light of my world, and I'm determined to give her the unconditional love and support I didn't always have growing up. She absolutely adores Greg, whom she calls Granddad. The bond they share is heartwarming, and Greg has been an incredible grandfather to her since the day she was born. A few months ago, out of the blue, I received a call from Tom. It was the first time I'd heard his voice in over a decade. At first, I thought he might be calling to reconnect with me, but it quickly became clear that his interest was solely in Mia. He said he'd heard through mutual acquaintances that I had a daughter and wanted to meet her. I was shocked. After all these years of silence, he suddenly wanted to be involved in my life, not for me, but for my child. I told him I needed time to think and hung up the phone. That night, I sat down with my husband and Greg to discuss the situation. Both of them supported whatever decision I made, but reminded me to prioritize Mia's well-being above all else. As I thought about Tom's sudden desire to meet Mia, something didn't sit right. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that his interest wasn't as selfless as he had made it seem. His son had decided to remain child-free, and his daughter was struggling with infertility. Tom, now in his late 50s, was facing the reality that he might never have biological grandchildren. It became clear that his sudden interest in Mia wasn't about love or family. It was about filling the void left by his other children's choices. He wanted to play the role of doting grandfather, not because he cared about me or Mia, but because it suited his needs. After much thought, I called Tom back. I told him that while I appreciated his interest, I wasn't comfortable with him being involved in Mia's life. I reminded him that he had chosen to walk away from me when I was a vulnerable teenager, and that I didn't trust him to be a consistent or positive presence in Mia's life. His response was not what I expected. He became angry, accusing me of being petty and vindictive. He said that whatever happened between us shouldn't affect Mia's relationship with her real grandfather, and insisted that he had a right to know her. I calmly reminded him that Greg is Mia's granddad, the man who has been there for me and Mia every step of the way. Tom, on the other hand, forfeited that role years ago. Things escalated further when Tom found out that Mia calls Greg granddad. He called me in a rage, demanding to know why Greg had taken his place in Mia's life. I told him the truth. Greg earned that title by showing up for me and Mia in ways Tom never did. At this point, Tom lost it. He accused me of trying to erase him from the family and said that Mia had a right to know her real grandfather. I reminded him that he had made it clear I wasn't his daughter, so by extension, Mia wasn't his granddaughter. He refused to take responsibility for his actions and instead doubled down on blaming me for keeping him out of Mia's life. Then came the final blow. He threatened to sue me for grandparents' rights if I didn't allow him to see Mia. The idea of Tom trying to force his way into Mia's life through legal action infuriates me. Where was this man when I was a teenager, crying myself to sleep because I felt abandoned and unloved? Where was he when I graduated college, got married, or had my first child? He chose to walk away from me, and now he expects to play the role of doting grandfather? Absolutely not. I decided to stand my ground. Mia is happy, loved, and surrounded by family who genuinely cares about her. Greg is the only grandfather she needs, and I refuse to let Tom disrupt the stability and happiness we've worked so hard to build. Since our last conversation, Tom has been relentless. He sent me numerous texts and emails accusing me of being cruel and selfish. Some extended family members have also weighed in, saying I should be the bigger person and let him into Mia's life for her sake. But I can't shake the years of hurt and abandonment. How can I trust a man who walked away from his own child to be a positive influence on mine? So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my father into my daughter's life after he disowned me for being my mother's affair child? OP's father made his choice years ago when he disowned OP. He doesn't get to pick and choose when to be a part of OP's life, or Mia's, just because it's convenient for him now. Terms like dad or granddad are earned through actions, not biology, and Greg has clearly earned his place in Mia's life. The fact that OP's father is threatening legal action shows he's more interested in control than building a genuine relationship. Grandparents' rights cases are tough to win, especially when there's no existing relationship with the child. So OP needs to stand her ground. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Your father has a lot of nerve. He abandoned you during one of the most vulnerable times in your life, and now expects to play the role of loving grandfather? Absolutely not. Not the a-hole. You're not being petty. You're protecting your daughter. Greg has been a constant, positive presence in her life, and that's all she needs. Tom's behavior proves he hasn't changed. He's more interested in control than actually building a meaningful relationship. Stay firm. Not the a-hole. Your father walked away from you when you needed him most, and now he expects you to overlook all that pain so he can be in Mia's life? That's not how it works. Mia is surrounded by love and stability, and bringing Tom into her life would only create confusion and drama. Protect your daughter and your peace. You're doing the right thing. This is heartbreaking, but you're absolutely not the a-hole. Tom had years to repair his relationship with you, but he chose not to. Now he's trying to guilt and push you into letting him be in Mia's life without taking responsibility for his actions. Mia doesn't need a grandfather who has already shown he can walk away from family. Stick to your decision. You're doing the right thing for your daughter and you. My 26 female. Parents have always been bad with money. When I was in high school, they let me know that I would be paying for my college and that I should get a job to save money. At 15, I got a part-time job, and they quickly started to charge me rent. My rent was $250 a month, plus some utilities. I saved what was left over for my future. Luckily, I was able to get a full scholarship to a great school. I worked 2 jobs while I was in university to pay my bills and also save for the future. Now I have graduated, and I have a great job. Recently, I was able to use my savings and bought a house. When virus hit, both my parents lost their jobs. I offered them to move in with me until they are able to get back on their feet. They accepted and moved in a week later. I had prepared a room for them, but they preferred my bedroom, the master, because they needed to have the ensuite bathroom. I let them have my room and moved into the guest room. They also began to rearrange the furniture and throw things out. One day I came home and my father had demolished the deck without my permission. The demolished deck even got me a fine from the HOA. My parents said I should be grateful because they are improving the property for me. Every day I will cook dinner and take care of the vast majority of the household chores. I've asked them to chip in, but they have told me that since they are guests, they should not be expected to help out with the chores. Recently I ran into one of my neighbors. She told me how lucky I am that my parents still let me live in their house, and that at my age, I should really be moved out by now. She said that my mother told her that I was living in their home rent-free because I lost my job. I corrected her that my parents actually live with me in my home and that they are the ones who had lost their jobs. A few days later, my parents came to me furious and said that I had humiliated them in front of everyone. They said that I should have not corrected my neighbor. I had made them look like losers who freeload off their kid. My mother told me that I was just bragging to people and that it was a sin to brag. I apologized for embarrassing them and I thought it was over. Yesterday, the same neighbor came to talk to me again. She told me my mother told her that I was mentally ill and I was living with them because of a doctor's order. My mother also told her that I am a pathological liar and to avoid socializing with me. I am beyond furious and I immediately confronted them. My parents told me they were justified in telling my neighbors these lies, that if I hadn't said anything to begin with, then they wouldn't have needed to fix the situation. I'm at my wit's end with everything that's happened, and I told them to leave immediately. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything to my neighbors in the beginning. Was I just bragging by correcting my neighbor about the situation? Am I the a-hole for humiliating my parents and throwing them out? Not the a-hole. So much not the a-hole. Your parents have been using you for yours. You were conditioned to accept that as their due, and frankly, you need to remove them. Charging a 15-year-old to live with them when they are obligated to raise you to majority is beyond awful. To add in the lies they are now telling your neighbors in an attempt to make themselves look better is terrible. Look into your tenant laws. They may be working towards squatters' rights or having you declared mentally incompetent somehow, and frankly, you don't need that. Kick them out, correct information to your neighbors, and go no contact with them. Employ a lawyer because they sound incredibly toxic. Not the a-hole. Your parents sound extremely selfish and narcissistic. They're taking advantage of you, and their behavior is totally inexcusable. They obviously have no respect for you. No parent should treat their kids this way. Not the a-hole. Good on you for finally kicking them out. They were taking advantage of you, to the point of kicking you out of your own bedroom, demolishing your house, using you as a free maid. Have some self-respect. You deserve better than this. Sure, it will affect your relationship with them, but is it really worth preserving? What do you get out of it? My wife and I have been married for 10 years. We met in college, and she has been my best friend for almost 14 years now. She is beautiful, supportive, kind, classy, and all around amazing as a wife.
We went through a really rough patch about a year ago, mostly due to issues on my end. However, she told me she was pregnant. I was overjoyed. She told me she would only keep it if I was 100% in on the baby and the marriage. I said I was fully committed, and we kept the baby. As time went on, I became increasingly insecure about whether or not the baby was mine. I did the math and thought it was unlikely it was mine, on top of having a gut feeling. I was internally agonizing over this for months, and after the baby was born, I could barely even hold him because I was so convinced he wasn't mine. I told my wife I wanted a paternity test. She was upset, but told me to get one if it would ease my mind. The test comes back 2 weeks later, and it says I'm not the father. I'm absolutely livid. I had an out-of-body experience. I stormed into our house and just let loose. I felt like I couldn't stop myself. I was completely broken in that moment. I cried and screamed and asked her what I did to deserve this. I absolutely never laid a hand on her. The whole time, she's just sitting on the couch, trying to comfort the baby. This made me even angrier for some reason, so I kicked her out right then and there. Told her to pack her bags and just get out. She calls me the next day and tells me that I deserve to know that the baby is mine, and asks me to get a paternity test from another company. I figure I have nothing to lose at this point, and another paternity test can only help me in a divorce, so we get one at the company she suggested, and I send a third to another company just to be sure. I get the results from one, and they say I am the baby's father. I wait a few days and don't say anything, then get the second set of results, also confirming I'm the father. I feel like the weight of the world has just been lifted off my shoulders, and I can finally be the dad I wanted to be. I call my wife to give her the good news, and she tells me she's not moving back in. She says she's disgusted at how I acted by asking for a paternity test and my reaction to the false one. She tells me I can come see my son, but she will be filing for divorce. I don't think my reaction was over the top for a man who thought he was being lied to about one of the most important things. I never showed any sort of violence, and I was so emotionally broken at that point. I know how it must have looked to her, knowing that I was the father, but I don't think she's seeing it from my perspective. I'm planning on discussing it with her later and trying to convince her to work on it with me when I go to see my son. Am I the a-hole for reacting in this way to what I thought was an enormous deception? Yes, the a-hole. You kicked your wife and baby out of your shared house. You do not get to just go back to how things were. My God, yes, the a-hole. Let's go over this, shall we? You assume your pregnant wife has cheated on you. You request a paternity test. Why the duck would she comply to ease your mind if she knew you weren't the father? If I had cheated on my husband, which I would not, but hypotheticals here, and he asked for a paternity test, and there was any chance he wasn't the father of my child, I would not stick around for the results, assuming I even agreed to one in the first place. Then you get the results, and I get it. It feels like your world is shattering. But that doesn't make what you did any less of an a-hole move. You could have called somebody, walked away until you calmed down, done literally anything else besides having a tantrum and kicking your wife out. And no, despite what you said in the comments, she was kicked out. If somebody came screaming and furious and demanding you leave the shared house with your fragile baby, would you risk saying no? And now you realize you've made a colossal duck-up. It's her fault for not instantly forgiving you? For not seeing it from your perspective? What about her perspective? Her husband of 10 years, the father of her child, accuses her of carrying somebody else's child. She knows it's not true, so when he asks for a paternity test, it's upsetting, but she agrees. After all, she has nothing to hide. Then the test comes back, and there's an error. But instead of having a calm, rational, adult discussion with her husband of 10 years, he goes completely off the handle, in front of the baby too. Unable to get a word in, she focuses on calming the terrified child, which only upsets him more. Then he kicks her out. When he finally learns that he was the father all along, he wants everything to go back to how it was. How? This mistrust didn't start with a faulty test. The test was ordered because of the mistrust. And who's to say he won't do this again if she talks too long with a male neighbor or stays out a little late at work? You have beyond ducked things over, and you better pray she doesn't use this against you in court. Yes, the a-hole. I'm guessing she got about zero support from you during the pregnancy because of your suspicions. Then, after the baby is born, you didn't even want to hold them. I'd be having second thoughts right there about you. And then the fit you had. Yeah, no. You sound like you have anger issues, and she was probably scared for her baby. Then you kicked her out with a newborn. By the way, illegal eviction. You done messed up. I'm glad she's getting a divorce, and I don't even know her. I, 39 female, have no children, but my younger brother Tim, 36 male, and his wife Jessica, 36 female, had 2 girls, Polly, 20 female, and Lauren, 17 female. Tim has a decent job with benefits, but he doesn't make a ton of money, and I've always tried to find a balance between being generous to the girls as their aunt and not spoiling them or making them feel like everything in life was going to be handed to them. Polly has grown into a responsible, self-directed person. She did well in high school. When she got into college, I told her that I would pay for what her scholarships didn't cover. She did great on the MCAT and now wants to go to medical school, which I have already privately told her that I will pay for. Lauren seems rudderless and is doing relatively poorly in high school, to the point where she isn't going to get scholarships in college since she'll probably have about a 2.5 GPA, and that's being optimistic. Several months ago, Polly told me Lauren was bragging to her friends that I was going to drop about $60,000 a year for her to attend college, and she was leaning towards a fashion design program. I gently told Lauren that I wasn't comfortable doing that due to her disinterest in school thus far, her unwillingness to explore possible career options, lack of any backup plans, and her inability to tell me why she wanted to do fashion design other than because it seemed cool. She got angry and said that if I had paid Polly's way, I should pay for hers as well, or cut her a check for what it cost to send Lauren to college, so that she can travel. My sister-in-law has since called me because Lauren has done the math on what Polly's college and medical school costs will be, and has said that I'm not giving Lauren the same chance to succeed. At the time, I said that Lauren was able-bodied, neurotypical, and that her interest in school seemed only to be because her friends are thinking about it. So I wasn't going to pay for her to party through college and either earn poor grades or drop out entirely. But if I don't treat her the same as I did Polly, would I be the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You gave Polly a huge gift. Lauren turned it into an expectation. That sucks. Hopefully she grows out of that, and maybe she'll come back to you with a real plan. I don't think you're the a-hole, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this significantly alters your relationship with your younger niece and her parents. Maybe if Lauren attends school and does well her first year, you can work out something where her schooling would be covered if she maintains a certain GPA. That way, you're not completely disregarding her. Not the a-hole. It seems to me that you are effectively giving your older niece a scholarship based on merit. Tell your brother and his wife that when Lauren has earned a scholarship from you, you will consider giving her one. And make it very clear exactly what she has to do to earn it, and keep it. I hope that both your brother and sister-in-law realize that neither girl is entitled to a dime from you, and that they really need to be extremely grateful for what you are willing to contribute. Okay, I have a 2-month-old and am currently on paternity leave. I'm fortunate to work at a place that's family-oriented, and where I'm a senior employee. I'm able to get a longer than typical paternity leave by working remotely from home. However, I had to go into the office to get documents that could only be accessed on my work computer. I thought I would give my wife a break and let her sleep in, so I grabbed my kid and headed to the office. Only my boss knew I was coming in, so the office was surprised, and as people do, they gravitated towards the baby. Lots of cooing, holding, passing around, etc. This was all taking place inside my office. Then my baby started crying. I told my assistant that she can rock baby or walk around the office, and they'll go back to sleep. My assistant took her outside my office by her desk, and I worked on gathering what I needed for my computer. I stop hearing crying and look up to see my assistant on her phone. No baby in her arms. I rush out and ask where my kid is. She said she asked one of the interns, let's call her Mary, to take her because she got a phone call from a client. Like most places, my office has summer interns who are college students. I've only met them once during the interviews months ago, but I went on paternity leave before they started and haven't worked with them like the rest of the office has. I know nothing about them personally since I've been out of the office. I went over to where the intern desks are and asked where Mary was, and they said she went to the bathroom. I asked if she had my baby. They said she thinks so, and I asked one of the female employees if she could go to the bathroom to get her. A minute later, they both come back, baby with Mary and diaper bag on her arm. I took my kid from her arms and told her I didn't appreciate her walking off with my kid. Mary said my assistant asked her to hold the baby, and when she did, it seemed like baby needed a diaper change, so she went and did that.
I told her I appreciate the sentiment, but didn't like the idea of a stranger walking off with my baby. In private, I told my boss how I felt and that I would feel uncomfortable extending her a job offer at the end of her internship, but the status of her employment now was up to my boss to decide. When I told my wife, she said I went too far. The girl was doing a simple task and that she probably was given an intern task. I reiterated that the girl was a stranger, and we wouldn't let a stranger change our kid's diaper anywhere else. Why work? Work doesn't stop people from being psychos. Wife said she understood that, but that I didn't need to jeopardize the intern's future employment, and that I was throwing my weight around since I'm high in command. Am I the a-hole? Yes, the a-hole. You took your baby into work, then left the baby with an assistant, which prevented the assistant from focusing on her job. Then your assistant didn't want to be your nanny and gave the baby to an intern because she didn't want to deal with the responsibility of dealing with a crying baby while trying to perform her job. Why aren't you mad at the assistant? Also, the intern was following orders. Don't bring your small child to your office if you aren't going to take 100% responsibility. Yes, the a-hole. Absolutely. The intern was being nice. She noticed the baby needed changing and took action. You found her with relative ease. She had done nothing dangerous or reckless and was caring for your child while you were unable to. I get that you might not appreciate her actions, but to actually go so far as to punish her in such a serious way is absolutely awful on your part. I don't know how you expected her to know exactly what your rules are. She was handed a baby and dealt with it like a pro when it was absolutely not her responsibility. You should have commended her, in my opinion. If anything, your assistant was a little out of line handing the baby off to someone she probably knew you were not familiar with. But in reality, none of these people signed up to look after your child.